This is the book of Revelation, chapter 2, verse 10, and it reads, Fear none of those things which thou shalt suffer. Behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison, that ye may be tried, and ye shall have tribulation 10 days. Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life. Giving all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rahakadosh. Double honor to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well in teaching us this 100% truth. Salutations to them and my fellow Akim who labor in this truth week in and week out on the highways and byways. Also, salutations to the hopeful elect of the scattered 12 tribes of Israel, scattered to the four corners of the earth that be like unto the speckled bird, also known as your Israelite foreigners and your so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. To you, I say Shalom. This is your brother Ayashar Barazal, prophet of doom from the Indianapolis branch of the Great Millstone, coming back at you with another lesson that is edifying to the elect body of the nation of Israel. and got this article here from the Latin Times where it says Trump official declaring anyone who preaches hate for America will be deported worries users. They just skipped the First Amendment. All right, so, yeah, that key word, they're preachers, Who are they talking to? The prophets. They may be talking about those Christians, but, Christians don't do that. They're trying to stay here. The elect men of Israel, especially the prophets, ain't trying to be in this place. And yes, this place is our captivity. We don't love the oppressor. To hell with that. You know, that's this dude here, Stephen Miller. You know, he reminds me of Egghead from the old Batman from the 1960s. For you all who don't know who that is, that's this guy here, played by Vincent Price. Yeah, Stephen Miller. All right, back to the article. So yeah, they want to deport um, people who preach against America. All right, let me get that word deport or deportation. Okay. To send out of the country by legal deportation, to carry away. All right, let's get that deportation. An act or instance of deporting the Slovakia. Get that word back. It says deportation, an act or instance of deporting the removal from a country of an alien whose presence is unlawful or prejudicial. Okay, and we know that this is an unrighteous decree based even on this place's own First Amendment. The freedom of speech. But that's what they do. They don't like what's happening with this word. It is shaking up. Babylon the Great, aka America. Okay, and that is our job to be out here and preaching this. The scriptures say uh, um, we obey God rather than men. Okay, we're supposed to. This is book of Jeremiah, chapter 28 and 8. And it reads, The prophets that have been before me and before thee of old prophesied both against many countries and against great kingdoms, of war and of evil and of pestilence. All right. That's what's coming to this place. That's what's coming to this place. We do the work for Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai. He told us to strive for the truth until death, and he will fight for us. Okay? So to hell with what this dude is talking about. We know that some of us are going to be martyrs for this truth. But, and if that being the case, according to First Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 16 through 18, those ones who are martyred are going to be the first to rise, okay? All right, when the Lord comes back in the clouds, all right, to save his elect, all right? Let's get back to the article. It says top Trump official Stephen Miller's recent declaration that anyone who preaches hate for America will face deportation has ignited alarm online, with critics warning the statement disregards the First Amendment protections. And we know they don't care about that Constitution right now. All right. Look how they going, passing laws to get rid of the judicial branch. I think that's House Bill or House Resolution number 1526 that's on the books right now. All right. So they can't interfere with Trump's executive orders. All right. Says the controversy began during a Monday morning appearance from the White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy on Fox News. Miller was defending the deportation of a Salvadorian national alleged to be involved in gang activity, as well as the pending removal of Mahmoud Khalil, a protester accused of supporting Hamas. See, he coming down with great wrath. He can just accuse you of anything, and that's it. But that's, like I said, we go through these For Thy Violence Against Thy Brother Jacob series twice a week, and that is all that it takes is an accusation. That's all that it took, and we're seeing that again now, is an accusation with no evidence, no concrete evidence, and they do what they want to do. But the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. Jake just had to deal with it. We're in our place of punishment, but this is coming to an end. All right. He says, while Miller discussed the federal judge's authorization to deport Khalil, and the online debate that followed quickly turned toward broader implications for dissent and political expression. In response to questioning by Fox anchor Bill Hammer, Miller asserted that Khalil would be, and went on to claim that everyone else who preached hate towards the country would also be at risk. Yes, he will, as anyone who preaches hate for America, Miller said. Under this country, under this administration, under President Trump, people who hate America, who threaten our citizens, who rape, who murder, and who support those who rape and murder are going to be ejected from this country. All right. Says Miller tied this rhetoric to a broader Trump administration stance that individuals who commit violent acts or who express support for those who do will be removed from the country. However, his sweeping language about deporting individuals for anti American speech quickly drew intense criticism. Social media users and legal analysts raised immediate concerns, pointing out that expressing dissent or criticism of the government is protected under the First Amendment. Some worried the administration was veering into authoritarian territory. You think so? They're trying to get it set up to where he can get a third term. All right, that's where it's headed. You know, it says continues. It's almost like they just skipped the very First Amendment. One ex-user commented. They're coming for free speech when it isn't the speech that fits their propaganda. Talk about totalitarian regime, another user added, while another pointed out that democracy doesn't work like that. Well, democracy is full of shit too. All of it. Left wing, right wing. All of it's bullshit. Uh, as I always say, left wing, right wing, same damn buzzard, especially when it comes to Jake. Neither one of them is giving Jake anything, and Jake is still begging, for equality in this place when we were never equal to these, non melanated, you know, Edomites, and the ones who are dark too, because you can have that as well. It's not about color, okay? But for the most part, the so called white man, all right? None of it works for us. This place is our captivity right now that's quickly coming to an end, as we can see with everything that's happening right now. All right, but and then you Edomites who are arguing this is what you wanted, this is what you voted for. You knew what they stood for, but you thought, what was that saying? Lyndon B. Johnson. If you make the lowest white man think he's better than the best black man, he'll empty his pockets for you. Okay, he said that back in the 1960s, and that shit is still working like a charm. And it ain't just y'all. You know, he also said regarding so-called black people, I'll have those niggers voting Democrat the next 200 years. Well, he's 60 years in and ain't stopped. The dude's been long gone dead and is working on both of y'all fools, okay? Uh, it goes on. It says the backlash has reignited broader debates over the limits of free speech, especially as civil liberties fall under scrutiny. While immigration enforcement remains a core theme of President Donald Trump's platform, critics are increasingly questioning whether rhetoric like Miller is a precursor to more aggressive suppression of dissents. And it is. All right? It is. That's exactly what it is. Let's see. This is a video here. Yeah. All right. Yeah, that's just a quick video from. I'll put a link to this article in the description box. You can check out this video later. I want to get to these scriptures. All right. So much for that. Salakia. All right. This is the book of Isaiah, chapter 29. Beginning in verse 20. It says, "For the terrible one is brought to naught." All right. That's Esau, Edom, the so-called white man. All right. And the scorner is consumed. That can be, Jake as well, and Esau, Edom, the scorner, one's coming against his truth, and all that watch for iniquity are cut off. That Jake being part of that scorner, that's your 2/3, your scoffers and stuff too, along with Esau, Edom. It says that make a man an offender for a word, and lay a snare for him that reproveth in the gate, and turn aside the just for a thing of naught. And that's what they're going to do, because that article said those who preach hate. Preach. Okay, got to watch that word, preach. That's what we're doing on the highways and byways, week in and week out, and the video epistles around the clock. We're out there preaching, about the downfall of this place. Yeah, you look at how it's treated, us going all the way back to 1492, fuck that dude, Stephen Miller, Yeah, he never had to go through that, but, hey, he better watch himself. He better watch himself, because we know, the Lord is going to raise that standard. I'll get to that later, a little bit later, but, this is all bringing forth the famine of the word, okay? Some scriptures are outlawed in some places. Was that in Canada? They had that law, C-357, I believe, where you couldn't say that the Jews are the ones who killed Yahushua, which hey, they did. you know, they said, give us Barabbas. They chose a criminal over the Lord. All right. Crucify him, crucify him. Let his blood be upon our head and our children's heads. That was a dumb thing to say, but it is what it is, because we suffering for it right now. All right. But yeah, this is bringing on that famine of the word. This is the book of Amos, chapter 8, beginning in verse 11. It says, "Behold, the days come, saith Yahweh our power, that I will send a famine in the land, not a famine of bread, nor thirst for water, but of hearing the words of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai." How do you hear the words of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai? By the mouth of his prophets, Okay, he speaks through the prophets, according to Luke 1:68, all right, through 70. He is spoken by the mouth of the prophets since the beginning, all right? So if we're not on the streets, that means that word is gone, you know? And, there's going to come a time where probably people, can't even call us if they still can. You know, he's taking the word off because you all have time right now to listen, but you want to joke around, deal with all this celebrity shit, you know, all this entertainment business stuff, the rigged sports. All right. So yeah, it's gonna be a famine of the word. He says, and they shall wander from sea to sea, and from north even to the east, and they shall run to and fro to seek the word of the Lord, and shall not find it. Where they at? They used to be on this corner. Where they channels go? You can't find their channels on YouTube no more. BitChute. What's that? That other one? Odyssey. Yeah, they're all gone. Yeah, well, you had a chance. You didn't listen. You thought it was funny. Other stuff is important, like trying to establish a place in a kingdom that's circling a drain, going down the tubes. All right. It says, in that day shall the fair virgins and young men faint for thirst. So it don't matter how good you look, you women. All right. And it doesn't matter how strong you young men are. There's no way you will be able to get that truth, you know, with the beauty or your strength. It's gone. All right. And that's the way it's gonna be. All right. Because the opportunity is right now. While you can still be on the streets. While we're still on the streets preaching, still on the internet. All right. This is the book of Isaiah, chapter 59. And let's start at verse 14. And judgment is turned away backward, and justice standing far off. For truth is fallen in the street, and equity cannot enter. Man, so yeah, it's gonna go away. All right. It says, "Yea, truth faileth, and he that departed from evil maketh himself a prey." That's the prophets. Okay. Once these things hit, we're not gonna get down with their system. We become a prey. All right. It says, it says, "Yea, truth faileth, and he that departed from evil maketh himself a prey." And Yahweh Bashem Yahushai saw it, and it displeased him that there was no judgment. All right. So verse 16, and he saw that there was no man, and wondered that there was no intercessor. Therefore his arm brought salvation unto him, and his righteousness it sustained him. That's getting that spiritual power. All right. Getting that spiritual power. All right. He says, for he put on righteousness as a breastplate, and a helmet of salvation upon his head, and he put on the garments of vengeance for clothing, and was clad with zeal as a cloak. Verse 18 says, according to their deeds, accordingly he will repay fury to his adversaries, recompense to his enemies, to the islands he will repay recompense. So, hey, when that spiritual power comes, it's a wrap, you know, for, putting your hands on the anointed, you know, like we talk about all the time. The moment you make a move on his elect, you know, you have a problem, Esau, you don't have a problem. There's going to be spiritual power on this side. All right. It says, verse 19, so shall they fear the name of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai from the west, and his glory from the rising of the sun. So from coast to coast, all right, north to south. When the enemy shall come in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord shall lift up a standard against him. And that's that spiritual power, and you're going to be wrecked. So, yeah, go ahead with your measures. The closer we get to this, to this, we see things like this happening. The closer we get to it, we know deliverance is is on the way. And as a beloved elder apostle Tahar declared, 2025, okay, the hopeful year of our deliverance. That's the deliverance of the elect body of nation of Israel, the elect of the elect, all right, as well as the judgment and destruction of Esau Edom, the so-called white man, okay, who is the king of Babylon and Great right now, Babylon the Great, aka America. Yes, we want to be out of here, and go back to our own land and be at rest. All right, because as you know, according to Revelations 18, this place is going to be a place for desert animals. You know, it will never exist again. Once the Lord's flattened this place in that day, you won't know where the states were. It's going to be that flat. All right. So with that, I hope this lesson was edifying to the elect body of the nation of Israel. Once again, I'm going to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Raha HaKakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well in teaching sisters 100% truth. Salutations to them and my fellow Akim who labor in this truth week in and week out on the highways and byways. Also, salutations to the hopeful elect of the scattered 12 tribes of Israel, scattered to the four corners of the earth, that be like to the speckled bird, also known as your Israelite foreigners, and your so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. To you, I say Shalom, Kwam Yasharala, Abad Babal, Shalom.